Well, good morning. Lovely to see everybody here, and people from across our project region and from much further afield on the island. As Aideen said, I'm going to say a little bit more just around the core pieces that we're working on at the moment, particularly developing the pilot practice out on the 20 farms and the network for the project, because we need some sort of a sustainable framework that will keep the energy that's been generated to date going beyond the end of 2014. So, the key focal points that we have around the project, Aibin has covered the awareness raising, which was going out to the rural communities, going out to the farm shows and spreading the word, talking about the concept of social farming, but talking about it not really to services, but really out within rural communities and where rural communities come together at agricultural shows and many events. So I'm not going to labour on that. The bits I will say a bit around are the network development and the pilot learning, and Aideen has mentioned there where the learning and the training will happen post what we learn from the pilot, and hopefully that will influence change and sustainability for people who have made the choice and begun to use social farming as an option of choice in their life. So who have we actually met in terms of the network and in terms of the people that have been actually out there on the ground? And we've met many hundreds of people at the various events and shows that we've attended since the beginning of the project. And at those events, we actually asked farmers and farm families who were interested in the concept that we were sharing with them to actually register with us, to stay in contact with the project over the length of the project. And those who were interested at that level, and there were 115, actually completed a register of interest form and returned it to us and will be logged on our database. Funny enough, in the last couple of weeks since we've been promoting this conference, we've had quite a few other farm families have heard about it. We had an ad in the Farmers' Journal about today, and quite a few other people have come forward and have asked us to log them on our database. But the 115 were the number that we had around about November of last year. We've over 300, way over 350 people from service organisations, from representative bodies who would represent people with special needs or people recovering through mental ill health, from rural development and community bodies, from the academic side of things, statutory authorities, all linked with the projects. And some of those are individual contacts we have, and many are organisational contacts. Significant interest also from outside the project region. So in terms of our networking, there's a lot of people there, and there's a lot of people to try and... That's a big challenge. How do you actually get a lot of people to come together around a concept that there's a lot of interest in, and to make some sort of a sustainable structure out of that, some level of understanding of that which continues to carry it on and to bring the message forward, and to be very grassroots in terms of its representation. So that's kind of probably some of the challenges. We probably have more challenges than answers around the networking at the moment. Part of what we're doing is linking in and talking to other networks around rural development who might be a bit more established and look at what their journey has been. And as Roy started the day by saying, in many ways what we're asking today are questions and looking for ideas that actually come from the experience of people who are in the room. Some of the key things that we actually did around the networking, we had a meeting in Armagh and then another one in Enniskillen, and some of the people who are in the room this morning were very kind in giving their time to actually come and be part of that. Those were network events where we called and invited people from the statutory and the voluntary health and social care sector to come together as we began to prepare for doing the piloting. We asked the farmers who were interested to come together and people from services. And we had quite a few people from the services came along to our meeting up in Armagh as well. We followed that. The OMA meeting was a little bit later. It followed on from the initial training that we did in the spring with the farmers on the project, and we had great enthusiasm among ourselves from the learning and the experience and the energy that was generated around the early training. And we wanted to share that with the wider group of farmers who were on our network and other people. And we had a very well attended meeting in Omagh on the 25th of March. There were people from the health trusts in the north, the HSE, voluntary organisations, and quite a few of our pilot farmers and people from the farming network at that. What we probably didn't achieve at that was actually finding a way of empowering that and trying to generate life that becomes a self-motivating, self-leading structure and organisation. One of the things that we want to kind of get some more ideas on and see how we progress that. We also had 2 network visits and this invitation went out to everybody on our database, the 350 people from the services and family interest side and the 115 on our farmer side, to actually visit where there was some social farming practice happening on the island of Ireland. And the two places that we actually came to visit were the Camphill communities in Monaghan, and on the same day down to Vincent Coyle's farm in Summerhill. And Vincent is here with his men this morning, or some of his men who go out there and participate with Vincent. The second trip was over to the Brothers of Charity in Roscommon. We met with Jerry Brown at Sunflower Farm and Garden and his group of men there. They would also have presented at the Armagh meeting, and we were hosted in the afternoon by Margaret Blacken very kindly and the management team in Brothers of Charity, who shared what the experience is like from the service provider perspective and why service provider organisations are interested in partnering up with ordinary families in ordinary community places, and how that journey is evolving and how they see it expanding into the future. The other piece on the networking side is that we have had some representatives from our network. Jim had mentioned at the beginning that apart from a management group, we have an advisory group, and that is drawn from the UK and the partner bodies in Ireland. But we also wanted the advice to be coming from people on the ground in the network in Ireland within the project, and we have identified 3 people through that network, or people have offered their time to actually put into the advisory committee of the project. We would also hope that that is part of where the ideas will come from around champions for the network to continue to actually build into and link into what's happening in local areas within the project region. The role of champions, well, we're not going to define it, but we see it as something that actually is beginning to evolve, where people in a particular area get to know the service providers, get to know key local contacts, farm families, people who use services, their families, representative groups in that area. We're hoping that that's probably the sort of shape that it will take, but we're open, as I say, to learn on that. There's also opportunities, and we're building into some strategic networking, insofar as that there are other groups out there, one being the Federation of City Farms and Community Gardens, and they're looking at how do you actually, apart from a group of people who are committed to practice and see the benefits, how do you actually get this onto the policy table? How do you get people to listen? How do you structure yourself that your network becomes something that actually helps people to achieve this, and that it actually helps people to do it in a sustainable way, that people can actually manage to deliver it? And there are some of the things that we're actually very interested in as well, and what we're linking to. And it's certainly about opening new conversations, many new conversations. So piloting, the other thing I wanted to say a word on. And this was our first day of training. Not quite, but it felt a bit like that when we all came together on the first day and sat down and said, well, we've had all the ideas now, where do we go from here? How do we make the first steps into actually linking people up, that we have the farmers feeling confident around what the expectation is, and as we start identifying people who want to go out and be part of this and are going to take those first brave steps with us to do that, and indeed the organisations who are going to go that journey with us, because we all needed to be sharing our knowledge and bringing different things to that particular journey. So I want to give you a little bit of an idea of where we're at on that at the moment. Just to say the recruitment bit, as I said, we had 115 farmers who had registered through the early part of the project. We did up a questionnaire to invite people to apply for the pilot posts, and there were 20 pilot farms that we were looking to recruit across the 12 counties, and trying, as Aidan was saying, to get an actual spread across. Our commitment was to get a spread across the 4 health trusts in the north, the 4 rural health trusts in the north, and the 2 HSE areas in the south of the border. So we had our application form, sent it out to our 115, and we got 59 replies back on that. We had a selection team from the members of the lead members of the project, who looked at the selection of our pilots out of those 59 based on the geographic spread, the community connectedness, the representativeness of the farming interests, and there was quite a range in that, from people who actually had quite small holdings to people who were actually on quite large commercial farms. And we had 1 or 2 commercial dairymen and sheepmen on board in the project. We've had 1 or 2 people have dropped out for particular reasons. Other things have come up, pressure of other projects that they actually had on. So we actually had a reserve of 4 or 5 farms there that we've been able to slot in. But as I say, there's been quite a range of interest in terms of where the farms and the farm families have come from who have been interested in coming on board on the piloting phase. In terms of the whole, I suppose, the risk management part of the project, we would have been very clear in our thinking around what we were doing, and we would have been using the same recruitment and selection criteria that would be out there, the same expectation that services would have if you were going to engage somebody in a service setting. So we would have gone through that in our formal kind of how we would have actually recruited. The people we would have selected have gone through police or Access NI, Garda or Access NI police checks in north and south of the border. And we would have got 2 validated references for people coming on board as pilots. Just a small little bit of analysis that we did just for today around where are the farmers actually coming from. We have 20 pilot farmers selected, and just in the starting steps of up and running and people going out onto their farms. And we had asked each farm family to identify, well, who was going to be the lead person who was going to be on the ground doing this on the day that people go out. Because in many situations, it is actually really a farm family commitment. There are a number of people who are interested in this. And I suppose if you're going this route, it has to be something that everybody in the family has kind of bought into and is enthused about. So we actually have 12 people who are the farmers who are at home or who are going to be the actual leads on this, who have identified themselves as the lead on this. In terms of key other people in the families, there were 7 farm families who had somebody else who actually came, who had experience or was working in the health and social care services. We'd have a number of people with occupational therapy background or nursing or social work or social care background. So there was that interest, or they may have actually had some informal practice, people coming out to the farm, and they could see where this was actually working. But we had 12 people there who were, if you like, the farmer who was at home was interested in this and was taking the lead. I mean, another of the 8 farmers there who were actually farmers who were taking the lead, but they were also farmers who were engaged themselves or were employed within the health and social care sector. So if you add that 8 and 12 together, you have the 20 pilots, and you have 7 other people there within that those mix who are actually coming from a health and social care background within those families. And we have one farmer who had actually been practising on a social farming basis for a number of years, hadn't come from health and social care background, had got into it. So there's quite a wide mix in terms of the learning and the skills and the knowledge that's in that farming, that's in that group of pilots that we have. And we hope that will really help us as we work through the rest of the pilot project. So getting started, the training that we did with farmers, the first 2 training days that we held, and we brought farmers together in groups of 10, 2 groups of 10, and there were 2 days of training. And we began by looking at values for practice and then moving values for practice into values for practice. I suppose our first conversations talked about, well, the history of service provision. Where did services begin? Why did services... what was the actual history there? What has the journey been to date? And we would know from kind of going back a couple of hundred years to where people were supported in the community and maybe at home, and people actually had social roles, and farming was more, there was an agrarian way of life, to the more institutional models that actually grew up, to today where we're actually asking, we're trying to support people in choices that they're making to link back into ordinary community places, and particularly rural places, and what our role is in that. At the heart of this, we emphasised and spoke about the core value of human dignity. We're all on this journey together. Any one of us can acquire an illness, a mental health problem at any time during our life. I think the figures on that would be about a quarter to a third of us may at some stage have an issue around mental health that we're working through. Funny enough, during the project, as we were getting going, we had a call from the HSC down in the Midlands around a number of farmers that they had who had youngish men but acquired brain injury through stroke or through farm accident, and other elderly farmers who actually had Alzheimer's, and they were looking for ways of engaging them. What they wanted to do with their day was do the things that they used to do, connect into a farming way of life. So it was quite interesting where these, and again, about that core value, people wanted to have the ordinary way of life, the things that they were used to. It didn't matter what the service really was like, but it was actually being able to engage in those things. We also covered quite a bit in terms of the whole safeguarding and protection and the legislation and requirements that there actually are around that. And as we had quite a mix in the room between people who would be quite aware of that, who were coming from care, had a care experience, to farmers who were coming into this very new, and we were taking them through those particular issues. The next part of training that we moved on to was the whole safety management on the farm, and this was quite an issue, and quite an issue that took some dedicated input. We linked in with the Health and Safety Executive in the North, who had quite a campaign on farm safety on at the time, and the Health and Safety Authority in the South, who provided quite a bit of the training material. And we really looked at doing a dedicated piece around skilling farmers up to actually be the lead people on farm safety on their own farm. In other words, around their current farm practice, being very au fait with actually how to risk manage what you do on your farm. And sometimes what we found the best way of going about that was to bring in a new pair of eyes to actually walk the farm with people, give them some professional guidance, and help people to actually continue to look at, well, if all the activities that I do, it might be fine for myself, but if I have different people coming in, my own family, my children, visitors coming, how do you actually keep people safe? And it is a very important, very significant theme, and we've put a lot of dedicated time, particularly into the really active bits there of doing risk assessment and how to deliver safety training, induction training and ongoing training to people that are actually coming onto your farm. And the last bit there around the safety statement, which is a policy bit, which puts together your responsibilities under that. The other piece that we actually did was this planning in partnership with the people and their support services, and we're just putting that bit together at the moment. We've had what we call a framework document around that, which looks at, in other words, the information that there is around people who are coming out, the special supports that a person, or the particular supports that a person may actually need to make it a positive, safe experience for them. So this is where we need to be working, and we are working in partnership with people, with the services to support people, and with the farmers. So that piece of knowledge, those various pieces of knowledge, are coming together to make a safe support package for people that they can enjoy the experience. I suppose at this stage I'd just like to say, and Aibeen will say another word just about the farm profile. We'd asked each of the farmers to actually say something about themselves. This is a task they took away from the training. On the website of the SoFAB project, under the profiles, under pilots. Thanks, Aibeen. Under the pilot heading on our webpage, you will find the 20 profiles of the farmers. This was really important. This was the story of that farm, of that family, their history, their values, why people are coming to this, why it's important to them, why the farm is important to them. Farms are connected in a very different way to how services are connected in communities. Aidan had mentioned that, the SoFAB project, it identified 135 farm-based activities run by services throughout the country, throughout the island of Ireland, back in the 2006-2007 project. Farms are connected in a different way. They have a social, cultural, business. There are many ways that they are linked in, and the people in that family are linked into their community at many different levels. So we asked the farmers to say a little bit about their farm, its history, why it's important to them, why it's special to them, because they're the things that you're going to be sharing. They're the things that the farmers actually share when they open their gates and their farm door and their house, and I suppose in their heart to the actual people who actually come in, and the people who are willing to share that part of their family and their life with others. So those profiles are up there, and it was, I suppose, from a practical level, it was a way of actually sharing that with people and their families who might be thinking of engaging, and with services and other people. We actually asked any of the people who are going to engage, there are 60 people, the opportunity has been offered to 60 people to complete a potential participant form. That was very much a person-centred form. We weren't really asking services around the opportunity. We were asking services maybe to identify people, families to identify somebody, and asking, why is this your choice? Why would you like to engage with it? Who can help this with you? Who will you share this journey with? Who will you tell the good things and the bad things to about it? So it was really, we're trying to put the people who are going to come out on the farms as being the people who are leading that, and our role on both sides is to support that and support that working well. As a project, we wanted to identify who the key contacts and key lead people were within the agencies, and that's been very important because we've really identified some very key champions who are out there in the health services and the voluntary sector who are really positive and get this and want to engage. We moved from that to actually setting up what we'd call informal introductory visits, where the farmers, the families opened, invited people out to come out and actually see the farm. So people had seen it on the web. That looks interesting. I'd be interested in going along, seeing what that's about. And that bit has been happening over the last month or so, 6 weeks or so. If people were choosing that option, then we have a little bit more detailed support plan that we put in place. And the first days that people go out is around induction and orientation. And that's based around the safety stuff that we actually talked about. In other words, the farmers have, at this stage of their farm safety plan and their induction safety plan in place, but also the interesting stuff around the activities. who you're going to meet, what we're going to do, how it's going to happen. And it can be a slow journey. There's no rush on this. There's time. This is about relationships, around getting to know people, around feeling comfortable, around adjusting it, being flexible, and actually making it a good experience for people. And that's where we move into the activities. So the Farmer's Log is just a way of capturing the key experiences that happen of each of the 30 days that people will be out on the farms. One of the headings that we have under that is relationships. We certainly will capture the activities, the things people are interested in. We'll be asking people, or Aibin will be asking people about what's happening. But one of the things we're asking the farmer each day is, how are things shaping up in terms of relationships, with people who support the people, with other people in the community? Was there an option to meet the vet today if he called? Did you get to the market, the bulk tank driver, whoever it is, that people are beginning to make new contacts and that they're beginning to develop roles and a different way of being in community. So there are some of the things that we're intending to kind of capture to this. Relationships are certainly key. We developed a pathway to participation document, which we shared with all the services that we're working with and with the people who are using services. That's relationships, I suppose, at an organisational level. We also took quite a bit of time to put a memo of understanding together, because we were pulling quite a few partners together from statutory organisations who have taken the lead with us on this, through the SoFAB project itself, voluntary organisations, and the people who are coming out. And we've identified roles and responsibilities for everybody in that, and a way of actually sorting problems if there are problems, or if problems do actually arise. That has been very good, because if you like, in other ways, that was part of the risk management of the project. We were clear on what our roles and responsibilities were, and who was responsible for doing which part as we move along. Some of the key important involving relationships have been community development organisations. I would have worked for about 24 years within services, and never really had much linkage with the community and the county development companies who are out there and are linked into so many different things in community, and such a rich resource of contacts within ordinary community places. Other networks of rural and community focus, I mentioned a few of those earlier. The farmer bodies, farm representative bodies, what their view is, what they can bring to the table. The user group representative bodies and our statutory and voluntary health and social care sectors, the agriculture and rural development sector, funny enough, are meeting up in Omagh. The feedback from the floor and from some of the health and social care people was it would be great if we actually had more representatives from rural development and Teagasc and that around the conversation, because we don't know that much about that the farming sector. We can see there are opportunities there, so the more people bringing information and knowledge from different perspectives, the better this chance this has of surviving and going forward. And our farm insurance sector, very, very important players in this, and I'm glad to say we've had very important conversations with them, key people to actually supporting and underpinning what we're actually doing. I think one of the interesting pieces as we were moving through this journey over the last number of months, talking to the Health and Safety Executive up the north, they made the comment that what you're actually bringing to the table here could actually be such a positive contribution to farm safety, because you're coming from the health sector and you kind of have that background and interest in strength where risk management and that has been so strong. We don't obviously want to overdo things on that front, but bringing that way of thinking can actually be a contribution that people can actually bring to enhancing the whole safety environment on farms. I think that journey is going very well. We're just at a point now where we're actually getting our insurances in place. There's a whole history around, as I said, the earlier SoFAB project. There's 135 farm projects across the country had been up and working, and they have a good history of their safety on that, and they're underwritten and insured by people on the health side of things. So we've been having those conversations and going that journey and bringing, again, it's a journey of bringing different elements of different sectors together on a journey that I think is going to be very exciting and very positive into the future. So I think that is my last slide, and I'll leave it at that and hand over to Aibin. Thank you.